one of the things that you note, and I think it's just very true, is we have more liberation than ever, and yet, in essence, we're less happy than we've ever been. Certainly, female unhappiness has declined significantly. It's declined relative to, even to male unhappiness. But I think male unhappiness has also fallen as well. What is also, I know you quoted Welbeck, Michel Welbeck,
Mhm.
in your book, and one of my favorite authors. If you can stomach the explicit sex in his books, he's one of the few people who writes explicit sex scenes that they actually are core to the actual book. It's not pornography, but it's like he's showing what has happened to our society, and what is this all produced in our world. I know there's some negatives, but what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think the framework that you started with there, Aaron, is a really good one for understanding it. In some ways, I think feminism has delivered on its promises. It promised to make people more independent of marriage, and it promised to make people liberated from the constraints of the world, and it's made us more liberated and more independent. It actually never promised to make us happier or less unhappy. And the evidence therefore suggests that people are more independent and less happy. They never promised that we'd be happier. There was implications, I think, here and there that we'd be more fulfilled, but that hasn't come to fruition. And I think that, in a way, that is the tragedy of the modern world. And I see great drama in the whole unraveling of family life that I try to document. And the great drama is that as the modern world advances and continues to deliver more and more on its promises without any limit placed on it, like limits from a Christian faith or limits from constitutional government, as these shackles fall off and the aspirations for autonomy are emancipated, human beings become less happy. And it really does suggest that there's something inherently incomplete about the world in which we live, and recovering or identifying what that incomplete thing is. I mean, you can call it happiness, you can call it virtue, and I think those two things cannot really be divorced from one another. Is an insight that maybe many people grasp. It's one of the stories of Frankenstein. Frankenstein thought he was a man who could just make a new monster, so he thought he was a god who could make a new race. He thought there was no limit on his will, and he ended up going crazy and being totally miserable and losing his wife and losing his family. Well, that was Shelley's way of saying, but this modern aspiration isn't all that human beings need. And I think it's been vindicated, not just in literature, but in our lives, the drama of our lives. And just on the same note, I mean, I'm not a great watcher of television, so you'll have to pardon me. But this should be what our art is about. That is, our art should be able to speak to the holes that exist in our souls, because we have emphasized these goods of autonomy and independence at the expense of the things that can genuinely ground us in a community and make us happy. That these trade-offs that we've taken have, by definition, have costs, and we should be exploring those. But our inability to see any women as anything but strong, weak, virtuous, wise in our art has really prevented us from investigating these really deep and important questions of human life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's why I love Welbeck. And you say great art and literature tells you a lot about the human condition and what it means to live in this world. And there's this Norwegian writer. I'm probably butchering his name. Karl Ove Knausgaard wrote this 6-volume autobiographical fiction called My Struggle that became a big literary sensation in Norway and was like a big global literary event. And I think some similar things about him. He's just narrating he's like a year older than me. He's Generation X. He's right in your age range too, and he's just talking about his life. From boyhood up, and his parents get divorced, and his father spirals down into alcoholism and ultimately drinks himself to death, and all the little things of his life. And it really just, I'm like, man, it's like the ultimate Generation X novel. It shows you like the realities of this world in a powerful way, even if it's not even intending to make a commentary on society. And so, we don't have a lot of that today, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I do recommend the Welbeck novels very much, and they show the emptiness of a more completed revolution, I think, than we currently have. And I'm going to have to get the 6-volume autobiography.
That's an audacious 3,600 pages. I don't know if you want to take that on. It's an audacious undertaking, but yeah. Welbeck's a lot thinner. His books aren't that that there. Yeah, and I do think in essence, a lot of these ideologies and so much of the rhetoric in our world really is about escaping the human condition. The idea that the limits of our life, growing old. Just thinking about like transhumanism movement in Silicon Valley. I don't want to grow old and die. I don't want to be limited by this, corporal body that I have. I don't want to suffer from the pain and loss. And it's just a delusion. It's just a delusion.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that transgender ideology is an expression of this as well, trying to escape the limits of our body, and it kind of goes with the grain of where modern society is, but ultimately is a new form of a chain and a new form of misery. I really would like to see doctors made responsible for what they do in these areas in the same ways that plastic surgeons are, and new torts made so that people after the fact can go after the doctors for malpractice.
Well, given that I think a lot of these things are actually fairly broadly popular in our society, what do you propose that we actually do? What's your solutions that you would lay out for how to address these things?
Well, yes. So first of all, I mean, the popularity of them has to be attacked, and the places that they exist in the law need to be called into question in their weakest spots. And there are different places for that now, I think, that can be identified. I think that we should have a positive ideal that we go for, and that positive ideal in public policy I call a policy based on part-time work, where we do nothing to discourage and maybe even do much to encourage businesses to establish part-time work for women who are of childbearing age, so that they can better balance some of the career things that they'll want to have in their lives with family life. And I think the remote work revolution has helped people in the middle class and upper middle class do that. Finding ways for people in the lower class to do that, I think would be an availing goal for policy. And
that's one that I think would be popular too. American Compass just did some surveys of people and basically found that the only group of people that really supports the dual career with kids model is the upper class.
Yeah.
Everyone else prefers some sort of single bread. They didn't go by whether it was the husband or the wife. They said single breadwinner model. Mm-hmm. And, that was vastly preferred by others. And then some others, like men would prefer, that there's like one person working part-time. But I think those things would be popular amongst people.
Yeah, and they're popular among others in other countries too. I mean, the numbers look to me to be about 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 women would prefer not to be working full time while their children are at home, but nevertheless, we spend almost no time preparing anyone for the idea that they should balance these things in their lives, and we don't make an object of policy like is done and can be done in other countries. I think Israel does a decent job of this. So I think we should definitely be guided by that positive ideal in public policy. And then, I just want to emphasize a third thing is that people need to be conscious of this when they're raising their children. That is, that they're surrounded by this revolution that's afoot. And if they do nothing to stop it, it will take their children. And, active steps have to be taken. It's not the 1980s. It's not the 1950s. It's in the era we live now. Unless you take the initiative to educate your children toward this, no other institution will. So emphasizing to your children, what is your life going to be like when you're 40? How are you going to be balancing all of these aspects of a good life? Right from the get-go is a crucial thing. It's going to be easy to get people into college. Everything gears people toward going to college, but getting them to prioritize marriage and family in their lives has to be the product of intentional education now.